All good?
I'm good.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'd like to welcome Dionne and Doug Irvine to this interview for Slow Wine USA 2020-2021. You've got a beautiful location out there at the tail end of the valley, a very narrow part of the valley. I wonder if you could just tell me how you all got started.
Well, we'll go back to the beginning. So we moved up here in 1997 from Southern California, and both Dionne and I spent sort of a part of our childhood in Southern Oregon. I grew up on a ranch in Southern Oregon, and Dionne spent some time on the coast during high school. And so when we had a family, when our girls were small and starting school and living in Southern California, we thought, let's go check out, Oregon and consider moving up here. And so just to get out of the hustle and bustle and just, have a different style of or lifestyle. And so our background is real estate development, and we just packed our bags one day and went for it, discovered this beautiful piece of property in Ashland and fell in love with it. We didn't have the intention of being in the wine business. And it was, we call it the Forrest Gump story, which just kind of happened and kept on happening. And we...
So wine wasn't in the picture when you got started? It was just a piece of property, a place to land?
It was after a wonderful trip to Europe and France and Italy and tasting some great wines that we go, hey, this is pretty good. And the wine scene in Oregon, it's been around in Southern Oregon for quite a long time, but it really started getting some legs back in 2000, in the early 2000s. And it was in 2005 when we took this trip, 2006, and fell in love with wine and made the decision on the 100-acre estate that we have here to go ahead and do a little tester, and planted 4 or 5 acres of different varietals, and discovered that our Pinot Noir and Chardonnay just flourished here. And it's because of the aspect of the ranch.
It's unusual.
Yes.
For us.
Yes. For a Southern Oregon wine.
Yeah.
But that being said, 50% of the grapes planted in Southern Oregon are Pinot Noir, and a lot of them go up north. So that's good. We're at a high elevation, 2,200 feet. It's a lot cooler where we are than the rest of the valley.
Yeah.
East facing slopes and a little breeze, so it's perfect. But our whole idea was just to raise the girls on a ranch, not a vineyard. Has some room where they can play around and experience this life in Oregon. And then we planted the 4 or 5 acres, that tester plot.
And that was down below?
Yep, that was down below. And right off the bat, we had a pretty good response.
Yeah.
And so we were only making a few hundred cases, and we upped the production and expanded the property, the vines, to 50 acres planted now of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, a little Gamay. We do the rosés, and we started this sparkling program as well. So that's kind of the background. It just kind of happened, and just the demand made us keep on going for it.
Yeah, a little magical accident.
You've expanded not only your acreage, your plantings to vines, but excuse me.
Bless you.
But also, you've expanded the resources you have. You now have a tasting room. You now have a winery. At first, you didn't make your own wines. How did all that come about?
Yeah, that was, I think that's been one of the most fun pieces really to this business, is really just continuing to learn and continuing to grow. And we still do a lot of little experimentation every year. And now we're so fortunate to be able to do that within our winery. But we originally started with custom crush, and we were fortunate enough to work with Quaddy North, and but also with the help of Robert Britton as a consulting winemaker.
Right.
And he, so for about 4 years, he helped us and kind of led the Quaddy team through kind of coming up with our style of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And I always, I never really knew that you could, dictate your style, if you will.
Right.
And I always thought, well, don't you just honor tradition, honor the site and let things happen the way that they're supposed to happen, and not really understanding that, your picking decisions, your barrel decisions, all of those really do actually play a role as well. And so that's been a really fun part. And then our tasting room, actually our 3rd anniversary of that opening is this Friday. So, and then the winery is also 3 years and that we've had that available. And so bringing on the winemaker, Vince Vidrine is the winemaker here at Irvine and Roberts. And he actually was, he worked with Robert Britton for about 5 years and really considers Robert one of his greatest mentors. And so the transition from working with Quaddy and Robert Britton into Vince then taking over the helm and then being able to do this all right in this special place was really, really easy. He understood Robert's style. He, understood Robert's protocols and all that we would do up in the winery. And then he's even taken it, he's actually been really a big part of the lead towards the organic movement that we're trying to achieve. And yeah, he has a very holistic approach on the vineyard itself. He's brought in Sarah Red Laird. We're doing, bee pollinator projects with her. So he's very conscious of the land, and we have always been that way as well. And just what we're leaving and what we're giving back.
We're just stewards of the land. But to add on to that, we knew when we did this expansion to the next 50 acres of plantings that we wanted to control everything. We wanted to, we don't source any grapes. We grow everything ourselves that we use in our bottles. And we knew once we made that commitment to grow that we wanted to bring everything in-house and not do custom crush and just control the whole chain.
Yeah. I think I remember that. I remember that once you really started and you found your grapes, you saw that your grapes were working. That was your intent. That it took a couple of years to get it organized and to have the volume, the crush volume that you needed for production. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. So this last year has been a bit of a challenge for most wineries. Can you tell me how you kind of made it through this last 6 months and what challenges you've seen?
It's been a lot. It has been a lot of work. And it has been challenging. The most important thing for us is to make sure everybody is safe and comfortable, from our guests to our employees. And we've worked really hard to establish protocols to make sure that happens. And we go above and beyond any government type of instructions or regulations. And we're just, we need to make everybody feel at home, feel comfortable in knowing that they're safe. And so it's been working, very well. Our business has been, we're actually up. Our numbers are up and our volumes are up. So that's encouraging. At the same time, we have this social distancing, the space that's occurring, and it's working out very well. And it's doubled our efforts, our workload, that's for sure. And we're working. It's a good grind, but it's a grind.
Okay.
Yeah, I think another realization too is, diversification is really important, and that's really any business. And just being able to, we had just started a whole e-commerce campaign the beginning of the year this is well before any of this ever hit, and we had no idea what the role that would end up playing in the months that we weren't able to do tastings, and still to be able to get wine to everybody who wanted it, through shipping and sending out e-commerce campaigns. So
that's great.
That's a big part of keeping people busy, keeping as many team members as possible employed, and then also winemaking has to continue.
Right.
Has to continue. So it's not optional for those to stop. So,
right.
But we feel really comfortable with what we put in place, and it feels like the people that are visiting feel the same. It's been a really lovely feedback from everybody that's come through. That's
great. So it sounds like the move towards e-commerce and a more aggressive wine to consumer program kind of compensated for the loss of some restaurants over that period of time. So that's great.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know it's very easy to find your wine locally. So you've made good inroads in the wholesale market too, just wholesale retail market. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you for buying.
Of course. Wouldn't have it any other way. So you mentioned that you're moving towards organic. Who actually is managing your vineyard? Are you doing that through employees, or do you have a service?
We use results partners to manage our vineyards. And then actually Vince, the winemaker, oversees results partners and places the protocols and the growing conditions and programs that he wants to put in place and he wants to see. Something Vince taught me, I used to like just a perfectly manicured vineyard where everything was shapely and not a weed to be found and not a gopher hole around, and like a putting green. And I thought that was the right way to do it. And Vince taught me, and Vince is a young guy, he's 37, 38 now, I guess. And he said, Doug, that's not the best way. It's not the best for what we're trying to achieve. It's not the best for the grapes. It's not the best for the land. There's better ways to do this. So he's very, very well learned in the vineyard and the practices and sustainability and regenerative styles of winemaking and the organic movement that we're on right now. So Vince kind of has a big say in that, and then he just makes sure that results partner follows the lead that he's laying out.
Okay, great. So organic is a 3-year process. Where are you on that timeline? Have you kind of formally started it?
Yeah, this is year 3.
This is year 3. So we're just getting the formal process started, and Vince has actually been taking the charge on that as well.
Okay, great.
And so we're looking forward to that. It's something you of course can't put on your label, you can't claim, until you get through that process. But yeah.
We've been live certified for many years.
Yeah.
Which is close to organic. So we're there. We're doing all the right things.
Yeah. And you said salmon safe as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
So one of the things I was kind of curious about, you do have that Eastern exposure.
I joined the team here at Duane and Roberts in 2017 and came on board. The two families were making kind of a big investment into the winery and tasting room. Wines had previously been made by a great team of local winemakers at a different facility, and their growth of the vineyard and kind of preparation to bring things just sort of on site finally coalesced, so to speak. So came on board in time to oversee this winery get finished up, and also the tasting as well, and be a part of that. And since then, it's been me, and I hired an assistant winemaker named Anna Mantiak. Been a wonderful help to me and to the team here, and it's kind of been just her and I full time, making the wines, and then I oversee the vineyard management, utilizing a local vineyard management firm who I'd worked with in the past in Willamette Valley. Trust immensely.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think one of the keys to a good wine is that the winemaker is directly involved in the vineyard, being on site, seeing the water tension, seeing the response of the grapes to the sun and the climate. So thank you for that.
I couldn't agree with you more. You know, in some of my previous work, had the opportunity to make wine from, I mean, at one point in time, like over 30 different vineyards. And it's so interesting and so amazing to be able to see all these, mesoclimate differences, soil differences, all, see how all those things can come together. But I really now feel, after working for estate vineyards for the last really 5-6 years of my life, really understand how critical it is to really truly express that vineyard. You really have to be on it, hands-on all the time, and be a part of that evolution, because there's no magic juice. It's just a good site being farmed well year after year after year. And all the challenges and successes kind of cumulative make that vineyard who it is.
Yeah, I think that there's an intimacy to your understanding of the vines. Are you at the point where you're looking at different blocks for different results in order to craft those wines?
Oh yeah. I'm a spreadsheet guy, and so, but I should say that, but I'm not. My mother's a CPA, so I'm not just accounting or anything like that.
No, you need that. You need that. It's both art and craft.
It is. I think that's one of the things that draws me to it so much, is that organizational planning piece, and really kind of taking all the granular bits, and then you have to feel your way to it. So like one of the first things I do is just take all the blocks, start to learn about it, really kind of document the results from the wine, and kind of what they need, and what they've excelled at, what they haven't excelled at. And then I break it apart and try things. So almost every block in every year has some sort of trial, whether it's a water trial, whether it's a picking trial, a leafing trial, a yield trial. There's always something, and the block is always itself, but it's like, how do we find that expression of itself that really works for creating maybe a wine that's a singular expression, like a single block oriented, single vineyard oriented wine, or if it's a piece to a larger chorus, or it really needs to, how does it support the rest of its players in the wine, and then just general health, of course. And I think that's something that we all, in the lore of winemaking, is this idea that stress is good, and I don't find that to be entirely true. I think an over vigorous vine is one thing, but I think a healthy, well balanced, vine that grows well throughout the entire season without a lot of stress actually produces better wines. So I think nutritional balance, water balance, sort of the cultural practices that kind of meet the needs of the vine are just as important as the fruit in that one given year.
Good, nice response. Over the last, since you came on board in 2017, how have you sort of changed the management of the vineyard, or shaped it to respond to the expression of wines that you're interested in?
Yeah, great question. One of the first things I did was, and I shouldn't say, so I come from a background of like understanding why. I like to think I understand why people do things in farming, and I seek to understand why people do things. And I think risk management is one of the biggest things that we all do. Especially, I think in the wine industry, a winemaker, a vineyard manager is managing risk 100% of the time. And so I understand why we were using some conventional methods within a certified sustainable umbrella, as certified as live. But we were using some systemic fungicides and some contact herbicides. And the first thing I did was move away from that. And again, I don't condemn farmers for doing what they need to do, but I feel strongly that building healthy vines and making healthy soil and keeping people healthy is a responsibility that we have and we need to take seriously. And so we're in the process of moving towards organic certification. There's a 3-year time period that we need to meet, in terms of our last non-approved application. We've gone in that direction. So we switched to mechanical cultivation and hand hoeing under the vines for any weeds. I'm not a weed. I'm not a destroy every weed kind of guy. I actually really believe in keeping as many plants as we can in the system, keeping diversity in the system. But there's some risk that we have to negotiate when it comes to managing the other plants in the vineyard. So we're doing some cover cropping trials to sort of see what we can do to minimize the cultivation that we do. That's an important thing for me. So we're working in that direction. And in terms of mildew and rot management, we're adhering to organic standards at this point in time.
Okay.
So I'm really happy with the direction we're heading in that way. And we've had some battles last year in the West. I think the West Coast, the mildew pressure was as bad as it's ever been, maybe in a lot of years. And we got through that, and I think we made some really beautiful wines. And it's kind of nice to kind of take that first big wave right on the bow. I would say my goal is precision, clarity, and elegance. Uh-huh. And I think what I want to express is the nature of the fruit within the vineyard. And by that, I don't mean as intense of a fruit flavor as possible, but I mean, when I say fruit, I mean the floral things, the spicy things, the earthy things that Pinot Noir can give. It can mean in Chardonnay, it can mean the green apple or melon, in addition to things like, maybe peach, which I don't even try to get to the tropical end of the spectrum for Chardonnay. I'd rather focus a little bit more on the yellow and maybe greener fruits and whatnot. And for Pinot Noir, I want to see the breadth, different parts of this vineyard and different clonal selections can give us sometimes some blackberry, but definitely dark cherry and dark plum sometimes. And then all the way down to cranberry and raspberry and wild strawberry and things like that. But so the reason I say clarity and elegance and is because, while I recognize that there are microbiota in the vineyard and in the winery that are present sort of naturally, and those can be sort of embraced, I find very quickly and sometimes often detrimentally, they can take away from the experience of what all that fruit composition, whatever it is, it can get in the way, and it can really sort of cloud that experience. So the style is really making sure we have good, clean fermentations, really making sure we're very clean and we're not using really toasty oak, or we're not using super untoasted resinous oak, that we're using oak that really sort of just lifts the thing up there. I always like the analogy of,
We're such a young winery, and we were just talking about this earlier. Our first vintage was 2009. And so, we're still young. But what we're discovering is that the wines, we really haven't had that chance to have those 20-year wines yet, to see what they're like.
That's true.
But the wines, the older wines are standing up very well. And what we're discovering is that 4 to 6 year period after the vintage, after the harvest, the wines are amazing, So I think that's their sweet spot. And the vintages that we do have in library are just holding up and maturing very well. So that's what we're discovering. What do you think, Dionne?
Well, and I think too, it's such a great question that because winemakers are often faced with actually making wine based on having it be released immediately, and that's a lot of pressure, honestly, to create something that's ready, 6 weeks after bottling, and that's not always ideal for ageability. And so we've definitely given Vince absolute free rein. These wines do need to be ageable. There isn't pressure that we need to get these into the market immediately. They need to be released when they are actually ready. And so one of our Chardonnays, for instance, the 2017 Chardonnay, was definitely geared towards a more ageable wine. And it really needed about a year in bottle before it was released and before it really all kind of came together and was singing, in a way that we were comfortable releasing it. And we knew it would get there, and Vince knew it would get there. He felt confident with that. So that's always our goal. The other funny part too, though, about ageability is really, it's actually from a consumer or the drinker's perspective, like what are they actually looking for in a wine? Because if they prefer something that's very fruit forward, they may not want it in 10 years, or that to them it might not be ageable in 10 years. But the person that wants that roundness, the tannin softening, that's their preference overall with anything, and not looking for that fruit bomb, if you will. They might like it on, 4 or 5 years later, much better.
Yeah.
So,
what I tell the consumers is when they ask me that question, how well does it age? I tell them it doesn't age very well at all. So you need to buy a bunch of it right now and drink it. Come back and buy more.
All right.
It's not working.
Well, this might be a good time to have a tasting. So I know that you've got some bottles there. If you'd like to present the wines.
Yeah. So I thought we would give you a kind of a little bit of like an encapsulation of what we're doing as a whole. So I have the 2017 Chardonnay, which is the one that we just talked about. And this is our estate Chardonnay. It is all of the clones that we grow on the vineyard. So we've included everything, all the Chardonnay clones, which is about 7 of them. And then we have the 2017 Convergence Pinot Noir. I thought that too kind of gives a good part of the story of who we are. And that's sort of a winemaker's blend, if you will. And in 2017 in particular, he went with 3 different clones from the vineyard. And then the other one that we're gonna taste today is the 2017 Pinot Meunier. And so that's been a really fun clone to have as part of our program. Of course, we use it in our sparkling program, but we also make a still red wine with it, which is really unusual. There's just a handful of producers really between Oregon and California that do that. And so it's really fun for the guests that come to the tasting room, even in the distribution world. The Soms, of course, they just love the geeky wines, love to be able to present that to their customers. And so just, being so rare, it's pretty much a hit all the way around. So, so we thought that would be a fun way. And it basically gives you all of the varietals that we're growing here other than Gamay. But Gamay is a new planting for us, so we haven't even produced anything with that yet. That'll be this fall, this harvest. So we'll have some of that soon. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to let Dionne do all the talking. I'm just going to look pretty and open the bottles.
No. Okay, so Estate Chardonnay. I'm looking forward to having you have a chance to taste as well.
Later today. It'll be my afternoon dessert.
Yes. So I actually really struggle with trying to tell people what they're going to experience and they're going to taste, because all of us, of course, have different taste. And but I can tell you that, you know, from a stylistic perspective, we just talked about kind of the philosophy behind this wine was really to shoot for that ageability. It's a little bit leaner probably in the previous vintage, or even the next vintage. The 18 is probably a little bit rounder. So stylistically, it is slightly different, but it hits a real sweet spot for me. And it's really picks up a lot of the citrus that we usually get from this vineyard site. And then there's always a floral component that's just really lovely, like just a fresh, you know, spring bouquet kind of is what I usually pick up.
How am I doing? Here we go.
And then a little bit of the barrel influence definitely comes through, a little bit of that toastiness, but not overwhelming. And, you know, just kind of a light, bright Chardonnay is how I taste it.
So we have a very specific barrel program too. It's all French oak that we use, and there's a lot of thought that goes into what barrels, what coopers, what toasting. You know, the grains of the barrels that we use for both our Pinots and Chardonnays, and you try to predict a year out what you're going to need and what barrels.
Yeah.
What coopers are going to go good with the vintage we think is going to come up. But there's a lot of thought that goes into that. It's just not like, give us some barrels. We work it pretty good. And Vince has even gone over to the coopers in France and have met with them and kind of, you know, explained protocols and things that we're looking for. And they match up the trees and the barrels, and it's worked out pretty darn good.
Yeah, we have about 13 different coopers that we work with. And then every year we hone it in, and as long as the consistency comes through every year, but you know, every vintage brings you something different too. So just continuing to learn and find out what's working and what's not, and if we need to hone that in. And you know, it's not necessarily that we want to use 13. It just has brought us, you know, a lot of different tools, and like Doug kind of referred to it as your spice rack, if you will. But each one does something so different. So having that availability is great.
It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm still good.
Okay, I'm gonna grab the glass, and then we'll. Did you have any questions about that one at all?
No, no.
Okay. Okay, so we'll move over into the convergence Pinot Noir.
So this is our convergence. And you want to explain the meaning behind the convergence?
Yeah. So I'll let you pour. That's okay. So, and I love how everything shows up backwards on Zoom and social media and all those things. So the convergence we talked about earlier, you know, a big part of the name of this wine was because of that convergence of the Cascade and Siskiyou, you know, mountain ranges. But we also think it kind of actually talks a little bit about our whole story as a whole. It's two families that came together, the Irvines and the Roberts. It's really the place where we find our community converges upon this place with friends and family as well. So it has kind of a dynamic meaning, if you will, for all of us. And it just felt like it was a great name for a wine for us. So.
And you mentioned that this was a blend of the, but it's a blend of the clones, not a blend of different varietals.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So this one happens to be a blend of Pommard clone, the Wadensville clone, and a clone that not too many people are familiar with. It's called 4407. And so just a little bit of that influence on this wine, but it's always been a kind of a round and generous, I think, wine. For me, there's still some earth tones. There's some floral notes, which make it really pretty. So it's sort of this sort of a mix of, you know, kind of the light and the dark. Pommard typically has brought us kind of the darker fruits, the blackberry, blueberry.
If I was going to pair it with a singer, I'd say Barry White. We're doing a little Barry White right now. It's just smooth and mellow. It's just, this is a great Pinot.
Yeah, nice finish and, you know, different complexities throughout the palate. So
That's good.
yeah. All right, well, we can move into the Pinot Meunier. And I have to steal a little bit of something Vince said at one of our tastings once, and I just thought it was such a great way to look at Pinot Meunier. There's very little expectation going into tasting this wine, because when you're tasting a cab, you have built-in expectations. When you're tasting Chardonnay, you have expectations. Everybody comes to the table with an open mind when they're tasting Pinot Meunier, because it's just not that often that you get to taste it. And he expressed, he's like, I wish that could be with every wine, that you could just go in with a complete open mind and taste it for what it is. But so that's one fun part, or fun way of looking at this. So right now we have about 3.5 acres of Pinot Meunier planted, about a little under an acre of it producing so far, but the additional acreage that has been planted will start producing this year, so that's always fun. For me, Pinot Meunier always has sort of a savory quality to it. So it's almost like a little bit more of a robust version of a Pinot Noir. It's you know, it's a close relative, so it makes sense that it still retains a lot of Pinot Noir qualities. But for me, it always tends to be slightly more earthy, slightly more savory.
My favorite thing about this wine is actually the customers. The first time they take a sip of it, and the expression on their face is like, oh, wow. You know, they found heaven. And then every time they taste it afterwards, you know, the smile comes back on. It is kind of a nerdy wine, but people absolutely love it.
Huh. So you see the appreciation in an unusual appreciation when they taste this wine as opposed to the others.
Well, it's just a bit of surprise for them. Like they don't know that this exists, this Pinot Meunier, and a nice surprise is always, you know, nice to have.
Yeah, and I think learning too, you know, the role that it typically plays is in sparkling and in champagne, and it's often referred to as kind of like the filler, if you will, because it can actually, the fruit set on it is typically much higher than Pinot Noir, and so a lot of it is used within sparkling just to make up for the other varietals that don't produce as much fruit. So, I mean, ours probably could produce up to 5 tenths to the acre, but we drop fruit. So we're still trying to keep it as a very, you know, premium style wine, and not use it as that filler that is often used for in sparkling and champagne over in, you know, in France. So that's our whole intention, really.
Okay. And have you released that sparkling wine?
No,
Not
it's
yet?
probably about a year and a half away. So we're definitely using the traditional method. The 2018 was our first vintage that we created it, and we have done a Brut, which is all 3 varietals, so the Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and the Meunier. And then we also have a Blanc de Blanc, so 100% Chardonnay. Okay. And we did that again in 2018 as well.
Okay.
Or 19, I apologize, yeah.
Okay, good. Something nice to look forward to.
Oh, it's going to be fun.
It's making him crazy.
I know. I want to pop it right now, and everybody says, just go away.
Be patient. Be patient.
Is there, as we come to a close here, is there anything that I haven't asked about or brought forward in our conversation that you'd like to have part of this record?
Um, did you tell everybody what great dancers we are? Other than that, no. And I don't know how to dance.
No, we really appreciate, just the nomination in itself is an honor, and to just be considered, a part of this movement, which is a big part of who we are, is really truly an honor. So, and thank you for the role that you're playing and helping this continue on in this crazy time. And we're all, thinking outside the box, how to keep life moving, and
life is good, and we're all blessed, and we appreciate everything.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Dionne and Doug Irvine with Irvine and Roberts Vineyards out in this beautiful, narrow part of the valley. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Maureen, so much.
know, the oak is like the stage, not the act, you know, and it just kind of lets people see the act a little bit better, you know. And so, yeah, those are kind of the things I want when someone says the wine tastes precise or elegant. That's the feedback I'm hoping for.
Nice. Okay. And your vineyard, the property is really planted to primarily two varietals. You've chosen to focus on two varietals as opposed to many in the lower quadrant of the state where they're planting everything, many varietals. Can you talk about the challenges of the two varietals and how you kind of continue to create and innovate with those two varietals?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. There's always those days where I'm like, I wish I made, you know, Tannat and Grenache and, you know, just like all the things. And, but, you know, I've really committed myself ever since I was in college, actually, to these two varieties, you know. So I really always had a deep love for them, even if I can't appreciate all the others just as much. You know, some people, I remember actually at the very beginning, me telling some wine shop owner, like, oh yeah, I'm going to focus on these varieties. And they said, like, you want to work on the hardest ones? Like, I'm like, yeah, actually. And the reason they can be so challenging is because, well, you know, there's always the susceptibility to mildew and rot in those things. Right. They're thin skin grapes, but they're also tannic grapes. You know, like Pinot Noir has a certain, it can be tannic in the context of itself. So like, even though Cab or Merlot has actually more tannins quantifiably, there's so much more like sweetness and kind of plushness and stuff. So like you can get it in that direction. With Pinot Noir, it's just so like, if you get it overripe, it so easily tastes overripe. You know, like if you leave a little sugar, you taste there's sugar in there. I mean, no one does that. You know, whereas some of these other varieties, you know, you like Zin or Merlot, or you could leave a little bit of RS just to like balance those tannins. I think finding the balance point with this like fairly acidic, fairly tannic, but like also not so plush textural wine. Also, it's a wine that, you know, Pinot tends to become reductive. Because it's not so aromatically intense like some of the others, like Syrah, you know, Brettanomyces. Like if you have you know, Brett, or you have lactic acid bacteria, they can become so present in the wine and distort and overwhelm the fruit that's there. So there's just like, it is a challenging grape, but at the same time, like if you're willing to really pay attention to it in the vineyard and pay attention to how you're extracting. I mean, I think I try to break it down into like, you know, growing it, what you're going to get out of it, you know, that site, the clone, the rootstock, how you're farming it, when you pick it, the yield you leave it at, the leafing, all those things, just to get a certain thing. You know, if you're trying to get a bigger, darker wine, go in that direction. If you're trying to get a more like red fruited, pretty elegant expression, you do the things to get in that direction. And then you bring it in and you extract it in that way. And you figure out how long you want to be on skins, how warm you want the fermentation to be, how much agitation you're going to give it. You know, if you're going to use any, you know, enological adjuvants or something like that. And then, you know, what kind of oak, how long you're going to leave it. You make those kinds of decisions. And you can really, I think the goal for all of us is just to dial in that what that site does well in a style that fits well, that you believe in. So I don't know. I think the style that we're going for is it's worked for this site, and it's been really fun and interesting. And every year there's little victories of like, oh, cool, we did this on this block, and you know, we extracted a little bit less on this one because the tannins have always been sort of a sticking point for us. Or, we love how soft this is. Can we give it a little bit more depth? Does that mean do we maybe, increase the water tension during berry development so we have thicker skins and smaller berries? Maybe we get a little more tannin out of it, but because those tannins seem to polymerize in a way that's really nice, we can push it a little bit more. So it's just all that little playing around that, that'll keep us busy here for many years.
Like, I think that's a great segue to presenting the three wines. Can you talk about the three wines that Dionne and Doug have chosen today?
Yeah, absolutely. The 2017 Estate Chard was one that I'll be honest, was really tough. It was my first year here, and getting used to a different climate, a different vineyard with different soils, irrigated site, very different from what I had experienced in the Willamette Valley. And I did what I knew to be right. And like I operated with these, like with the principles that would make the wine that I wanted to achieve. And then we got it in the cellar, and it was hard for me because I didn't know what to anticipate, but I thought I should. So it was for a while, it was pretty tight and reserved, like it had lots of acid. It had some tannins present. There was some kind of these herby notes that I just wasn't sure, like I always sort of know that how wines evolve, but you always have that bit of doubt. And after a year in bottle, that wine really it's a little bit of a cliche, like closed up flower that you're wondering if it's ever really going to open. It really opened nicely and elegantly. And that wine, it's one thing that I think really kind of gives it its complexity too, is that it's composed of a number of different clonal selections all within a small area. So you get a singular site expression, while you also get some really cool complexities kind of thread throughout the wine because of its diversity.
I love that Chardonnay. It's got depth and texture and just a beautiful aroma that is long lasting. It's both front and back. I just love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm become such a Chardonnay fan over the past, at least the second half of my career so far. It's one of those things, like in Oregon, Chardonnay has really come around from this sort of lagging afterthought for so many people to one of the most exciting things in the industry. And collectively, the industry in Oregon has done what Oregon does really well, and that's come together and learn from one another and share with one another and grow. And so I'm just so thrilled to be a part of Chardonnay in Oregon at this time, to be honest.
And your second wine is a Pinot.
Yeah, the second wine is the 2017 Convergence. Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
So it's always a little backwards it is 100% backwards.
No, it's straight.
Oh, it is. Okay, cool. Well, great. So the 17 Convergence Pinot Noir, I think the best way I like to describe this wine is so I'm such a Burgundy person. Anyone who's really sort of loves Pinot Noir has probably at some point in time, gotten their mind all mixed up trying to get through all the different appellations in Burgundy. And this sense of place and site is so important to that. So the sort of single expressions for me had always in my life been sort of the pinnacle. And we do that here as well. We make these single block wines, and I think the best way to describe those is like a single note on a great instrument played very well. And when that first chair violinist hits that one note and the shiver goes down all our spines, I think that's maybe one kind of version of what I think we try to accomplish with those single vineyard sites. With the Convergence, it's something else that it took me a while to really truly understand and appreciate, because I'm not a musician. And that's that when you take all these different instruments and different players of different philosophy, but you can somehow get them to play a chord at the same time and create a sound that can only be created by all these individual identities, it can be equally as affecting, you know? And so what the convergence is kind of some of our favorite barrels from our favorite blocks, actually most of the blocks in the vineyard. And we spend probably the most amount of time blending this wine in order to kind of create that voice, that lifted voice together. And so this wine's a little bit more on the darker end of the spectrum for our vineyard site. Usually a little bit more oak, just given the barrels we've selected. But I can't remember off the top of my head, but no more than 40%. I actually think it's closer to 30% new. Like the Chardonnays as well, these wines, this one probably spent closer to 16 months in barrel. So a little bit on the longer side for us. We're usually, 14 to 16. And that kind of depends on the tannins that year. And this one's been a fun favorite for us, and it's been fun to watch it evolve over the last 18 months since it's been bottled.
Nice.
Not 18, but close to that. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then our last one is the 2017 Pinot Meunier. And this one, I'd never worked with Pinot Meunier before. I don't think most people have. It's genetically an ancient mutation of Pinot Noir that's obviously, it's proliferated in Champagne in France, and makes up at least a third of the acreage in Champagne, made into white wine for sparkling wine. But and there aren't a lot of places in the world that produce it as a still red wine. When I got here, they had been doing just that. And there's something really attractive about it. There's something kind of like a little bit more like earnest than Pinot Noir. It's like the fruit's a little bit more available. The earthiness is a little bit more present. The tannins are a little more there, but there's also this like present sweetness as well. So I do see a little variation from year to year, to be honest, partly because we just have one block, a small block of it. But it's been really fun. And the thing I always tell people is that it's so great because there's no expectations. With Pinot Noir, with Cabernet or Chardonnay, everyone's had ones they've loved and ones they've hated. And there's always like a style that they're kind of going for. I don't think anybody has a style of Pinot Meunier that they already are looking for or trying to avoid. So I love that.
Yeah, that's an unusual varietal to serve as a single grape. That's nice.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited. We planted another 1.5 acres last year, and we've got 2 additional selections. So now we have 3 clonal selections of Pinot Meunier. I think we're one of the more diverse Pinot Meunier vineyards in the country.
Yeah, nice. Well, Vince, thank you so much. Are there is there anything that I should have asked, or that that didn't get included, or that you'd like to add that didn't come out in conversation?
No, I don't know. I think maybe the only thing I'd like to say is kind of emphasize just the small nature of this place. And, it's a family that runs it. It's a small group of people who are like family who help run it and support it. And the intention is long-term for the place and for the people. And, I think that the nature of business these days, it's a little bit more rare to find these places that are so focused on quality, but are also so kind of giving and family oriented. So I think that's the only emphasis I have. And then I just want to say thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity talk with you guys and talk with you, Maureen, and then also present to Slow Food and Wine.
So I really appreciate your time, Vince, and more than anything, I want to thank you for making good wine.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
So that'll be sort of the end of the formal. I've got a couple of questions that I didn't get answered before. What % of the grapes are estate sourced versus non-estate?
It's all estate.
Okay. Wanted to be sure about that. And your yeast, native, commercial, mix?
Basically, I choose commercial yeast to finish all the fermentations. I don't mind things kind of kicking off, but I am pretty adamant about making sure that we make sure that we finish it successfully.
Yeah. Okay. Fertilizers, plant protection, weed, certifications. Are you formally involved in this, formally engaged in the certification process in terms of 1, 2, 3 years next year you'll actually be certified, or is it something you've just been talking about?
I'm engaged with Oregon Tilth, but kind of in the early stages, to be quite honest with you.
Okay.
But we've known we've got a year until we can be certified.
Uh-huh.
I didn't realize there was and shame on me, I suppose, but I didn't realize there was a transitional certification until recently. So I'm currently pursuing them. I have a phone call with them tomorrow, to be honest.
Okay, great. And you think next year you'll be through that process?
I hope so. Yeah, I'd love to be able to. Well, yeah. In terms of marketing, we haven't really had the full-on discussion about how we would implement those certifications, but we believe in what we're doing, and I think for the longest time we were like, cool, we don't feel the need to be certified, but at the same time, I think we've realized it's to be a part of the conversation, to be a part of that community. It's because we can. I think we should should become.
And will your vineyard be certified as well as your winemaking, or is it just the vineyard?
I need to discuss more about what those protocols in for the winery, but for sure the vineyard would be the key piece.
Yeah.
One of the sticking points for organic certification within the winery was no added sulfites, and so to be called organic. And making wine without sulfites it's not just challenging, but it changes the style, and to me adds to the obfuscation. I can't ever say that word, but it increases the lack of, or decreases the clarity of the wine when you start kind of leaning more into that oxidative realm. But I appreciate those who. I do appreciate those who take that path.
Okay, yeah. Good. And then these are production questions for the 3 wines that y'all presented. What is the MSR and then the production volume for each of those? Do you know offhand?
Yeah, the suggested retail for the 17 estate chard is 30. Gosh, it's either 32 or that one's 32.
Okay.
And the production volume, I don't know, my computer. Gosh, I can email you that stuff.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think it's just over 1,000 cases. I mean, it's definitely in the 1,000 to 1,500. We kind of swung. I think 18 we were closer to 1,000. So I think 17 we had a little bit more.
Okay, well, check it on those 3 and let me know. And there's one other you probably need to check too. Acres under vine, and then total production for 2019.
Okay. For 2019?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and I can get that to you shortly.
All right, great.
I'm never like the numbers guy who's got the this is how many liters my car engine is or anything.
If you have the spreadsheet, that's all that matters. Nothing else matters. Well, Vince, again, I thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for heading up the winemaking and the vineyard management for Dionne and Doug. I know it's a huge responsibility. It's certainly an avocation for you as well as a profession, but it takes consistency, solidity, and patience. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It's an honor and a joy to work with these guys and work at this place and be in this area. I'm just happy to come in and do it every day. So.
Great. I can't tell you when those bottom vines were first planted. You know, they had them planted on the slope and they dug up everything and the erosion was.
Oh no.
Oh my God, that first year was just like so scary. I wondered if it would ever come about. But
yeah, that lower site is really a challenge for multiple reasons, and it sounds like it's been it's always been a challenge. I'm really excited about these newer blocks that we have on the northwest side of the vineyard. Those are coming on. We've got a few acres of Pinot that'll come on a little bit, and we've got a good little area of Chardonnay that'll come on. We started a sparkling program, and I believe the Chardonnay from that vineyard will ultimately be sort of the key pieces to that program. Mm-hmm. And then also Meunier, some Gamay Noir, mm-hmm. and then ultimately next year, more Pinot Noir going in.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks again, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Marnie.
All right.
All right.